Thank you, and I will go on with a few words of introduction. And started by saying that we are members of French-American lab, and I think this is important because as members of this joint French-American lab, we are constantly in between. Of course, we often stare at some American cultural aspects with strangers' eyes, which are sometimes very funny to our dear colleagues. But we also follow what's going on in our own country with some somewhat Americanized eyes. And that's why I think also intersex is of particular interest for us in many aspects. I'd like to focus on two of them. I'll speak shortly of the first one and maybe give more details on the second aspect. The first aspect is that the demands of intersex individuals have been realized by the general public much more recently in France than in the US. Up to now, these demands have not been satisfied, and that's important to say. A French intersex individual named Gaëtan Schmitt recently lost his case and could not legally be recognized as intersex. So on the legal side, and probably on many other sides, French people are only taking the first steps of a long way. So no doubt that we, as French people, will be enlightened by today's discussion. The second aspect is probably less clear-cut and it requires more explanation. I've been working as a philosopher these last years with French and American colleagues on the ethics and politics of care. As you probably know, the ethics and politics of care is an American approach which aims at opening the realm of morality and at rethinking the binaries of our worldviews thanks to a feminist perspective. This approach has found a very particular echo in France. French scholars have extended the ethics and politics of care to different fields than our American colleagues. It has not been used much up to now, except to discuss parents-children relationship when dealing with intersex. So in this French tradition of extending the American ethics and politics of care to different fields, we could suggest today that this approach might help us to wonder what does caring mean when dealing with intersex. In order to investigate this issue, it's necessary to take into account the multiple meanings of care. Why is it so important to care about intersex? What do we care for when we care for intersex? How is it possible to create a dynamics between caregiving and care receiving when dealing with intersex so-called patients whose condition is not per se pathological? Last but not least, it is important to address the political challenge of caring with intersex. No, I'm saying caring with, that's not a French mistake or a bad translation. As put by American political theorist John Tronto, caring with is an activity in which citizens of a democracy shall be constantly engaged through taking care of each other as well as of the democratic structure of the society. In order to address this question of caring with, let's go back to the issue of being in between. I started with. Maybe one reason why intersex is so interesting and important is because it makes us focus on what is between us. Inter-est in Latin. Intersex, inter-est. It's not neither girl nor boy, as this is the title of a French book about intersex. Intersex is what is between us. It helps us to focus on what relates us rather than separate us, and thus intersex may help us to understand how caring can be consistent with the democratic commitment to justice, equality, and freedom for all, including intersex individuals. As a conclusion, I would like to rely on a column written last week by philosopher Paul Preciado for the French journal Libération. Preciado puts very clearly that we did work on our heads for centuries by refusing to acknowledge the necessity of a Kuhnian-like revolution. Faced with the intersexual bodies, humanity made the scientific mistake as well as the moral and political thought to consider that it is the intersex body that is ill and should be cured. And yet it moves, said Galileo, and yet intersex also remains a reality. Preciado shows that, on the contrary, it is rather the binary sex-gender system that is ill. Moreover, he concludes that the price of what is called sexual normality is what he calls an intersexualicide, and that, last but not least, the only cure that is needed is a change of paradigm. That's the reason why we think that it's necessary to address the biomedical, ethical, and political facets of this question together, and that's why, as Anne said, we brought together people coming from different disciplinary backgrounds. And we thank very much our speakers to come for this interdisciplinary meeting. Let's hope that together we can contribute to understand how intersex can help us to go beyond the binary, that's the title of our workshop, and build this cure. Just a last word, we've been very lucky to have incredible sponsors both from France and America. Here at UCLA, we would like to thank our wonderful colleagues of the Institute for Society and Genetics, which is the host institution of our Epidapo lab, and generously sponsored this symposium. We would like to thank particularly Anna Landecker, Daniel Cheniz, Anna Veville, and Amisha Gadani. We are also very thankful for the support of the Office for Science and Technology of the Embassy of France in the US, and especially Jean Rosenbaum, who's here today. Last but not least, this symposium takes place in the general framework of an international group of research, which is founded by the French National Center for Scientific Research to bring together scientists for labs all over the world to discuss ongoing research and emerging concepts, as the concept of form of life, which is the theme of our network. We are happy and honored to welcome today two members of this network, Alison Cole from CUNY and Estelle Ferrares from Amiens University. Estelle is the leader of this international group of research, and she will now say a few words.